hearty welcome to one and all. This is episode 107 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me here on this late Monday afternoon in New York. If you're catching up on episode 107 on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, are enjoying the content, click like, subscribe, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you're catching up with this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same rule applies. Click like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. So today we're going to get back to the other series that we've been working through, which is called The Best Movie You've Never Seen. And I'm aware that there are going to be some of you who have seen the movie that I'm going to discuss today, but I will hazard a guess. If you're under 35, it's very unlikely you've seen this movie. And if you have seen it, I deeply, humbly apologize. But we can also look at The Best Movie You've Never Seen as a literal interpretation, which is, in my opinion, this is the movie that you will most enjoy if you've never seen it. So really, it's a semantics argument, whether or not you've seen it. I realize that there are films that I might think are more obscure than they actually are. But with that being said, I hope to shine a light on a movie that, if you're not familiar with it and you stumble upon it, you will say, holy shit, where has this movie been? For me, it's that kind of film. And we are talking about the late, great John Huston's 1981 combination World War II sports film, Victory. Released across the pond as Escape to Victory, released in the United States as Victory. So I said a World War II / sports film. That's kind of a strange designation, but it's exactly true. So if you took an underdog story like Rocky, but put it during World War II in Europe, in, unfortunately, German-occupied portions of Europe, you would have this movie. And not coincidentally, the star of the film is who?
The star is Rocky Balboa himself, Sylvester Stallone is the star of the movie.
Sly, in a sort of under-the-radar, terrific performance. He actually lost a lot of weight for the role because he wanted it to be more believable. Sly plays what would normally be referred to as the ugly American. You have this all-star cast of some actors, such as Max von Sydow and Sir Michael Caine, I should say, within the confines of a movie where the cast is made up of an international gallery of famous soccer players, or as they call it across the pond, football, led by none other than Pelé, who was past his prime as an athlete. At the time this movie was made, he was about 41-ish, but he could still get it done. And I will say this, without major spoiler, Pelé has a moment of athleticism and acrobatics late in the film that ranks with my single favorite moments in any movie. It's something that I have rewatched literally hundreds of times. So the basic setup for Victory is, it is World War II, and we are in a prison camp, probably in France, but it's somewhere in an occupied land where the Germans have full control. I don't think that it's in Berlin or anywhere near Berlin. I'm not sure on that. The movie doesn't really belabor that part of it. The movie sets up this strange scenario where Max von Sydow, a phenomenal actor, he plays a member of the German High Command, and they are very precise in the way they show that he's not a Nazi. He doesn't really like war, and if he had his way, he would like countries to settle their differences on the pitch, as he puts it, in a sporting contest. football, they call it soccer. We Americans and Sylvester Stallone calls it. And so Michael Caine as Colby, relatively high ranking in the Allied military hierarchy, himself his character is presented as a former soccer player that he played for not Manchester U, but a soccer firm, as they call them, like Manchester U. He is a big soccer player. And Max von Sydow, as Major Steiner, recognizes Colby. And despite the adversarial nature of this is Allied military, this is Axis military, they bond over soccer or football. I'm just going to call it soccer because Stallone would want me to, as he puts it.
This freaking soccer game is ruining my life.
This freaking soccer game ruins a lot of people's lives. But Max von Sydow comes up with an idea. For propaganda purposes, let's play a soccer match between Allied prisoners of war. And it's kind of strange the way all of the great soccer players on the Allied side, think about how many prisoners of war we had, but somehow all of these fantastic soccer players end up here in this particular prison camp, led by Michael Caine, who in real life can't play soccer, but his character is presented as one of the best soccer players in Europe. They're all there together. Amazing. The magic of movies. So they come up with this idea. They're going to play a soccer match. They don't say for propaganda purposes, but we know the idea will be the German national team, representing the Axis powers, will go out there and beat the shit out of the team representing the Allies, the Allied side, the good guys, our side. But Michael Caine is very clever. Colby is clever. And he figures out a way to leverage this to get better treatment, better food, better equipment, better living conditions. And ironically, Major Steiner goes for it because as much as he wants Germany to win, but there is a certain spirit of sportsmanship in him that Colby senses and plays into. You do want a competitive match. If we don't have the right food, we're going to be chucking our guts up out there. That's not going to look so good for you guys, is it? You know, he's kind of got a point there. So regardless of what happens in the soccer match, they are living better, living more comfortably. The guards aren't screwing with them. They're not getting beat on or anything like that. They're simply training. And Sylvester Stallone, as the ugly American, he's not really ugly. He doesn't have a terrible attitude, but that's usually how they would refer to an American outsider in a film made across the pond. So Stallone, as Robert Hatch, wants on the team. He has connections with the French resistance, and he can plan an escape. And his last name of Hatch is a little bit too on the nose because he hatches an escape plan where the Allied team, regardless of what's going on when they actually play the soccer match versus the German team, there is an angle in which they will be able to escape at halftime of this game, which will be an enormous victory for the Allies in general. You know, public perception, it's terrible but true, regardless of whether it's 2024 or World War II. Public perception is hugely important. And we saw this in Saving Private Ryan, a movie that is, to me, a little bit problematic. I love Spielberg, and it's incredibly powerful. But they kind of give it away. They give up the game, where they're saying, and the high command from Marshall on down understands the absurdity of sending a bunch of young, in most cases, U.S. soldiers who have survived, sending them into the hornet's nest, not just D-Day, but to try to rescue a missing soldier, a paratrooper who's probably already dead. We're going to send a team of guys to try to find one guy in the middle of nowhere, just because public perception will shine on us if they're lucky to find him. because his brothers have all been killed, and from a public relations standpoint, we need a victory. They're probably all going to die, and Private Ryan is probably already dead, but what are we going to do? We're kind of fucked no matter what happens here. And in the world of this movie, perception is very important. An idea of every POW, and we've seen this in other movies, The Great Escape and Stalag 17 on down. Your job is to try to escape. This was something that the Sir Alec Guinness character kind of forgets in The Bridge on the River Kwai, one of the great war movies ever made. They're not your friend, even if you're getting chummy with the Japanese high command. Those are not the good guys. They're not your friend. Fuck them. Fuck them. Your goal is to escape, not build the best bridge you can using pioneering British technology. What are you fucking kidding me? So in the world of this film, for all of the chumminess, and the movie gets this right, for all of the chumminess between Major von Steiner, Max von Sydow on the German side, and Colby, and Michael Caine as Colby is working this guy. Von Steiner might think that, well, I'm friends with the British, the soccer player. I used to watch him play before the war. I like him, and I think he likes me. No, he doesn't. He's using you. Good. Good. So Stallone's character is presented as a good athlete, but he's got real soccer players. You've got Pele doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Nobody could take the ball away from him like the real Pele. Incredible visuals. And Pele himself designed the soccer plays for the film. Now, John Huston, master filmmaker, right? Did a lot of extraordinary movies, The Maltese Falcon, for decades, that John Huston made so many great movies. But he allowed Pele to design the soccer plays, and then it would be up to him and his crew to figure out how to actually shoot it. Because you can design all the plays you want, but actually filming it is another story. So Stallone is not a soccer player. He's a great athlete. He's presented as such in the film. And the fact that he can even mix it up with real soccer players and be believable in that regard, okay. But he wants to be on the team because he knows they can escape. They can score a victory for the Allies, who really badly need it at this point in the war. They decide to make him a trainer. And then some other shit happens, and he becomes a goalkeeper. Part of the plan relies upon him obviously not just being a trainer, but being on the team. And there's some scenes of real serious shit while this sort of somewhat lighthearted World War II sports film is playing out, and the setup before we get to France and before we get to this soccer match between the Allied POWs, many of whom are incredible soccer players, and the German national team, who are all great soccer players. So Stallone escapes. He escapes, and he's leaving everybody behind, leave the world behind, leaving everybody behind. But the French resistance sends him back. They basically say, no, now we really can get these guys out of here, but you got to go back. You're going to be the point man. So it goes from theory to him thinking, I'm done with this war. I'm not going to get captured. What are you, stupid? He gets himself captured. And as much as Major von Steiner really can't stand this guy, they send him back. And that's how he ends up becoming the goalkeeper. He was a trainer. Now he's the goalkeeper. And here's the other thing that's believable. Because his character is such a good athlete, he has the tools to be a good goalkeeper. And we see Stallone move around the net a lot better than when he was trying to actually play striker or defense or whatever it might be. So the movie then builds for this soccer match. Now we know that their whole idea here is to try to escape, not win the game. But no one else knows that. The people on our side who are going to be attending this match are just hoping against hope they're able to pull off this escape. It will look really good for us. It will get us back on our feet in terms of public perception because, the first part of the war. At this point, nobody really knew what was going to happen. D-Day was a long way away. Here in, I think it's supposed to be 1942, 43 that this takes place. So Stallone has a great moment where he's essentially not quite winking at the audience. Sly was in his early to mid 30s at the time, but he is clearly the star. Michael Caine internationally maybe was close, but it's Sly's movie, and he is playing the Rocky angle. He's absolutely playing it. The screenplay wasn't his, but he for sure had input at various points. At one moment in the movie, somebody says to him, "You don't want to get shot as a spy, do you?" And Stallone, almost as if he's talking to the audience, goes,
"I don't want to get shot as anything."
Yeah, no shit. What do you mean you don't want to get shot as a spy? I don't want to get shot. Whether it's shot as a spy, shot as an American, shot as a guy who was with the Canadian Army, shot as a soccer player, you want to call it football? I don't want to get shot, period. I'm here to survive the war, one way or the other. I escaped, you made me go back. That's to me the weirdest part, and the most unlikely thing in this movie is that Sly pulls off an escape and then allows himself to get captured. I feel like if they made the movie now, he would be engineering shit from outside rather than go back in. But in the world of the movie, it's so weird. It almost feels like, well, this had to have been a true story because the guy escapes and then he just goes back. He just goes back, yes. So we see Pele with his incredible acrobatics, his extraordinary skill still in evidence, and other great soccer players, people whose names you can Google, like Werner Roth and Mike Summerby and Osvaldo Ardiles. Great soccer players, World Cup winning soccer players in the 60s and 70s in this movie, acting, doing the best they can. And Michael Caine out on the pitch, they're trying to make it believable that he was a great soccer player. So they have to do very, very creative cutting and editing. And there's a moment where when you understand Michael Caine is playing a guy who is an incredible soccer player, but he's just an actor who's stumbling over his own feet, quite frankly. There's a moment in the movie where he is running, and I believe it's Osvaldo Ardiles, who was a magician of a soccer player, almost on the level of Pele. That's how good this guy was. And the two guys are kind of jostling on the same side for the ball, and Michael Caine barks, "Leave it, it's mine." Yeah, leave it, it's mine. The movie builds to this extraordinary World Cup style soccer match. And Sylvester Stallone, as Robert Hatch, is the goalkeeper. The way they were able to keep him on the team, and this was what I alluded to, were some really brutal shit. They have a goalkeeper who is a world-class level goalkeeper. They couldn't take a second goalie. The only way they would be allowed to take Robert Hatch with them to the game is if the primary goalkeeper was injured. And injured enough so that when their own doctors, meaning Major von Steiner's doctor, would say, no, this guy really is injured. They're not pretending that he's injured. So Michael Caine as Colby literally has to break this kid's arm. It is really vicious and brutal moment in a film, which otherwise it keeps the horrors of war mostly on the sidelines. But there we see it. They don't have a choice. Sly's character has to go. He has to go. And this poor kid has to get his arm broken into 3 places. Horrible. But there's a running gag that I've always appreciated, which isn't really a gag, but to me it is. The guys are on the train. They're going to the game. And Stallone keeps asking Michael Caine, where do I stand for a corner kick? And Caine just doesn't answer. And then finally, before the game, where do I stand for a corner kick? Far post, Hatch. Far post. So the movie, the setup is you have a packed stadium, presumably with mostly people from France because the woman who was sheltering Sly's character when he had successfully escaped before he went back is in attendance with her son. And I hate to say it, the actress who plays that woman kind of looks like Talia Shire. It's not an accident that they cast an actress who looked like Talia Shire. They could be cousins. There's an international audience for this game. Even though there's no TV, there would be newsreel and radio broadcasts around the world. And they hired a real radio announcer who had done soccer matches in real life to be the broadcaster. So Stallone, now we've seen that he is a competent goalie, but this is a German national team, and they're going to just run through him unless the Allies come up with some kind of crazy defensive strategy or just start playing at an even higher level. So Stallone, because he is not really a goalie, he's a guy who is training and on-the-job training. He's only had a couple of weeks. So as much as he knows what he's doing, he's got no business playing in a World Cup level game. That's ridiculous. But he's doing it, and he gives up a goal which no world-class goalie would ever give up, where he's not in the right spot. He's almost an observer, and he keeps forgetting what he's doing, that he's actually a goalie. And he keeps wandering away from the net during play. It's just fucking stupid. So he gives up a goal, and then he almost gives up another. And Michael Caine, my favorite Michael Caine moment in the movie, he's screaming, pleading with him, stay on the bloody line, stay on the bloody line. He's saying, stay on the fucking goal line. What the fuck? Where are you going? Stop wandering 20 feet in front of the net, because then when you have to hustle back, you're giving them angles to score. Stay on the fucking line. He says, bloody. Stay on the bloody line.
Yeah, but
Just stay on the bloody line. We see Pele dominate in spurts in this game in the first half. The Allies are down. They score a goal. But Pele's character takes a dirty hit, and he is out. It does not appear that he is going to be able to play anymore. I believe we're led to believe he's got busted ribs, because he spends the rest of the movie kind of holding his side. But all they wanted to do was get to halftime. I believe they're either down 3-1 or 4-1. Doesn't look good. So they get to the half, and the French resistance breaks through in the bathroom like the tub and the ladder, and they are out. All they got to do is go down, and they have a path to freedom, as the original title of the movie would imply, escape to victory. Stallone is ready to go. Everyone's ready to go. And one of the guys says, wait a second. I don't want to go. We can win. So what the hell do you mean we can win? This is our shot. We're going. No. Fuck this. We're going to beat those German sons of bitches. Let's get back out there and let's just win this game. Not even Stallone ends up going. In that moment, that frenzied few minutes where they have to go if they're going to actually pull off this escape before anybody finds out they're gone. They got maybe 10 minutes to get through. Even Stallone says, you know what? Let's get these guys. Fuck them. Sorry. They go back out, and everyone on their side in the stadium is not expecting them to come back after the half, because they all know, well, they're going to escape. There's not going to be any second half to the game. There's going to be a crazy scrum as the Germans realize, what the fuck? Where are they? But by that point in time, they would have been long gone, and the French resistance would have had every one of them hidden. But here they come, and the Allied prisoners on their side, the look on everyone's face is just like, holy shit. The actor Daniel Massey played a member of the Allied High Command who was not a soccer player, and his facial expressions when he realizes that his guys are back out on the pitch are hilarious. Again, highlights of the movie, the facial expressions of some of the characters. So if they were to go out in the second half and just get blasted, the movie wouldn't work. They go out Without Pele, their best player, and his name in the movie is not Pele, it's Luis Fernandez. They get to within one goal, and then they score a tying goal, but it's disallowed for offside. It's bullshit. The Germans, the officials are supposed to they're not supposed to be blatant, but they're kind of tilting the game in the favor of the Germans just in case. So Pele, who has been on the sidelines in a lot of pain, puts his hand up, and Michael Caine as Colby, they got a minute. He trots over, and Pele says, I put me back in. I feel better. I need to play. There's not that much time left. We're down a goal. Get me back out there. So Pele comes back out there, and with time running short, the Allies manage to get the ball, and Pele makes a couple of maneuvers with his feet, keeping the ball, keeping his feet at a critical moment where they really can't afford to lose the ball. The soccer ball moves around. Michael Caine, Mike Summerbee, Ardiles, and Pele positions himself in the middle of the field with the goal at his back, and the Allies down a goal with probably 2 or 3 minutes left in the game. They're running out of time. And Mike Summerbee, the real-life soccer star, extraordinary soccer player, he kicks a ball from the side, from near where you would have a corner kick. He kicks the ball high in the air, and Pele, standing in the center of the field with his back to the goal, and the ball arcs in the air, and there's defenders all over the place. There's like 4 or 5 defenders and Pele. There are no other Allied players in the area, and the ball arcs through the air, and Pele pulls off a kick which is the stuff of fairy tales. It's called a bicycle kick. Ronaldo has done it a few times, and Maradona was famous for occasionally employing it. But it's not really practical in a game, unless it is desperation time. The odds of timing your leap properly, connecting properly, and managing to direct the kick anywhere but 50 feet off of the goal, it's very unlikely. It's not worth it. But in the world of the movie, the ball flies, and Pele moves forward and is trying to line up the direction of the ball, the angle, and Pele leaps into the air at the exact right time, and with his back to the goal, executes the bicycle kick. And the ball, he slams it backwards past the goalie for the tying goal. The stands go fucking crazy, because they're all rooting for the Allies. They're in France, in occupied France. And the goal by Pele is so extraordinary, the character Fernandez, but Pele's acrobatics and the goal is so incredible that even Major von Steiner stands up and applauds. Because all along, all this guy has wanted, yes, he wants the Germans to win, but he wanted to see a competitive game. He's seen it, and now he's watched an athletic maneuver he has never witnessed before. And it is amazing. And the sportsman in him, the human being in him, can't help jump up and cheer. And everyone around him is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He can't stop cheering. And he keeps saying the word fantastic. I've never seen anything like this. So the Allies tie the game. And then, unfortunately, if you want to say unfortunately, there is a kind of bullshit call against the Allies where the time runs out and the Germans are going to have a penalty kick. And we've seen penalty kicks. There have been World Cup games when the U.S. women's team in 1999, Brandi Chastain, that famous moment, they won it with a penalty kick. So penalty kicks, sometimes games are decided on penalty kicks. And in this instance, a fantastic soccer player who later played for the New York Cosmos, Werner Roth, is the guy who takes the corner kicks for the penalty kicks for the German team. And Stallone, who's beaten up, his character he almost looks like a Rocky movie. He's busted up because there were a couple of moments in the film where they kicked him in a scrum. He got hit in the face. He's bleeding. He does look a little bit like Rocky Balboa. It's not, again, not a coincidence, not an accident. We're supposed to think of this Robert Hatch as like a Rocky. And Rocky's real name was what? Robert. Again, there are no coincidences. There are no accidents, not in a movie like this. So the two guys face, square off, and each man nods at the other in respect for the sportsmanship and the effort that they're both putting across. And Sly goes back. And if the goal were to go through, this wouldn't be the movie. It wouldn't be a Stallone film. It wouldn't follow the Rocky formula unless Sly saved the day. In this instance, literally saves the day. And the beauty of this film is when we think about it, and how often, at least in the old days, when athletic contests end, famously the Yankees in 1976, when Chris Chambliss hit a walk-off home run, all of a sudden 15,000 people were on the field. When Sly makes that save, the game is over. It's a tie. The Allies haven't won, but they haven't lost. Everybody streams onto the field. And before you can say, who needs an escape? Here's our escape! Stream onto the field. And that's how the movie ends. And it is uplifting, ridiculous, but uplifting, and the movie is intensely exciting, and the good guys win. And this is the sort of thing that if it had happened in war, it would have been a humongous public relations coup for our side. The fact that these guys were supposed to escape, they didn't even escape. They said, we're going to beat these guys. And by tying, they essentially did beat those guys. And a movie, it's the kind of ending, it's a quicker ending than would be done now. Now there would be like a coda, there would be a denouement. But in this movie, they decided, as the first Karate Kid 3 years later, originally they shot a different, like a more elongated ending with a confrontation in the parking lot between Sensei Kreese and Pat Morita's Mr. Miyagi. But they decided to end the movie at the height of excitement with Daniel getting the trophy. And Victory also ends in the same ballpark. We don't actually find out exactly what happens to the characters, but we have a pretty good idea. And the reason why I'm, as I said earlier, confident that most young people have not seen this movie, even if they would say, I like sports films, and I like movies about war, even if they're not combat films, movies set in wartime, war atmosphere type films. Victory has never, to my knowledge, has never been free on any of the major streaming services. It has never been on Netflix. And the weird part, it was a Warner Brothers co-production. It has never been on HBO Max, to my knowledge. I have had HBO Max now for 3.5, well, now it's just Max, but I've had it since Cry Macho. When I first did the subscription, they had a deal when Clint Eastwood's Cry Macho was a few days from premiering day and date in theaters and on HBO Max. Victory has not been on that channel. It's not on. And you can rent it on Prime, you can rent it on Apple, but it's not the kind of movie, if you don't know about it, you're not going to say, oh, I gotta see it, unless you're a Sylvester Stallone completist, in which case then at a certain point you'd have stumbled on it. But honestly, you're more likely to watch Nighthawks for the first time. Nighthawks has been on streaming. It was on Netflix for close to a year. I'd never seen that film. I watched it during COVID. It was on Netflix. But Victory is a movie worth seeking out, and it is a movie to treasure. And it was not a huge box office hit. It did turn a profit. It had a budget of around 10 million. It ended up grossing like between 25 and 30 worldwide. Not really a huge hit, but also it got a lot of acclaim in certain circles for the realism of these soccer sequences and for the fact that they were believably able to slot actors who were just decent athletes. In the case of Michael Caine, Stallone is obviously better than a decent athlete. But they were able to sell it that if you didn't know, you wouldn't necessarily know. There are real soccer monsters on this field, along with people who should be in the stands. The movie is a ton of fun, and they don't belabor the suffering that some of the characters would have had to go through. It's on the edges of the story. And it is just an old-fashioned rah-rah crowd pleaser. And I think it's so much fun. Is it a great film? No. But this is where you get into best versus favorite. Victory is absolutely among my top 10 favorite sports films. It's not one of the 10 best sports films. It's not even close. But it is one of my favorites. And the scene that I described with Pele hitting that bicycle kick at the biggest moment in the film, something totally unexpected. It's a top 5 moment for me. It's that exciting. And no matter how many times I rerun it and watch it, I'm still amazed that something like that even exists and that they were able to pull it off in a movie in a way that is logically possible. And given what we know about the character that Pele plays, it's the kind of thing that his character would have tried to do. Because if he's in a conventional attack position, they're going to be all over him. But because he is not, because he does not appear to be in a situation where he could score, even if he had the ball, because he's got his back to the goal, that's why it works. Victory, or if you prefer, if you're across the pond, it's called Escape to Victory. Directed by John Huston, released in the summer of 1981 when soccer mania was plowing through the United States. Pele had played for the New York Cosmos. We had the famous goalkeeper, Shep Messing, another phenomenal name. Shep Messing was the goalkeeper for the New York Cosmos back then. And Pele, in the late 70s, just before he started work on this film, was past his prime, but he could still play, and he brought out the crowds. People wanted to see the greatest player who ever lived in the flesh. And this movie is worth seeing, even if you're not a big Stallone fan, or a big sports movie fan, or a war movie fan. But if you love soccer, on top of everything else, it is so good to see Pele with his skills showing off in this movie. And some of the other great soccer players, Osvaldo Ardiles gets to do some acrobatics himself. Soccer is a beautiful game when played at its highest levels. And this movie, the final 30 to 40 minutes, even if you think the first hour is just okay, the World Cup level match between the Allies and the Axis powers is worth the price of admission. But I would argue that this is a 4-star movie anyway, just because it's so enjoyable. And it does exactly what it sets out to do beautifully. And Huston's direction is great, and all of the performances. I mean, to get competent performances out of soccer players is easier said than done. And Pele is hilarious when he's not crushing souls playing soccer. He's really funny. And he and Stallone have some scenes that are just gold. But Victory, 1981, directed by John Huston, starring Sylvester Stallone, Michael Caine, Max von Sydow, Daniel Massey, and a whole host of international soccer superstars. Number 4 in the continuing series of the best movie you've never seen. I'll be back with episode number 108 real soon. Till then,